First thing I wanted to talk about, because we got into a little bit, but now things have seemed to change a little bit for the Nets. They won a couple. They're 8-10. They won a couple. Kyrie comes back. So it looks like, okay, well, maybe they can do better than what they've been doing. But then they go to Philly, who's playing without Embiid, without Harden, without Maxey, and they get waxed. Philly doesn't have their top three scorers, and the Nets really weren't even in the game. What does that mean to any of you guys? What does that loss mean? Was it just a single loss, or just does it answer to the deep problem that they have?
Yeah, I'm going to answer both. So all the good teams lose one clunker. You just never get that. That happens. On any given night, that'll happen to a good team. But to your other point, this could be something deeper for the Nets.
Me personally, it's not a statement loss. The Nets are mediocre. But whenever there's a media circus around a game, you try to draw too many conclusions. It's got a mediocre team that has bad chemistry. They're going to lose games they should win and win games they shouldn't. And the media's bored right now until the Super Bowl, or until at least the NFL playoffs. So they're trying to, make anything popular in a season where they really can't, because it's all about Christmas till Christmas. It's all about the college football playoff till then, for sure.
No, I think it's we've all seen sports long enough where you read the lineups before you get to the game. You see who's in there, and you've already checked the box, the W box, right? You come in and you already think, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake, and you're already looking at the next game. So again, as talented as the Nets were in that game, and as depleted as the Sixers were, the Sixers they just got hot, and the Nets couldn't throw the ball in the ocean. They just played bad. They thought their stuff didn't stink, and they thought they were just going to walk in there and just get a W. I think they just got caught.
Yeah, and it's sad to say a team that's playing that poorly really needs to get going. To me, it just shows their mentality that they can't get it going. That I don't care, even if they look at the roster, which everybody does, you're right. But say, listen, we got to get this moving. To me, it's very telling that they couldn't light a fire under their own asses, no matter who they're playing right now. It's just...
but they just don't have that. They just don't have that dude. They don't have that dude on that team that is just going to go out and just going to have that killer instinct. So that Mamba mentality, they don't have that guy.
You don't have.
I think they just packed it in. I just think they packed it in this year.
Yeah, I think so too.
It in. I mean, because even if everything you all are saying, they read the roster and all of that. All right, so that means they're flat the first quarter. You don't give up for the whole game. Once they knew that they were in a dogfight, they would start fighting. They didn't fight back. They didn't care.
Any game where Ben Simmons decides to show up, at the tip, that should invigorate that team. Because you got a chance to win that game, period. If he's playing at any type of decent level, an NBA team has a chance to win that game. Kevin Durant shot less than 20 shots. So until he starts consistently saying, whenever he does in his career, I'm going to shoot 25 shots plus a game, period, he's going to fail. He didn't have to do that in Golden State because anytime he didn't put those shots up, someone else who was a better shooter did. But he hasn't had that luxury any other place in his career, and it shows. When he doesn't shoot, his team struggles to score. I mean, that's bottom line.
I think you made a great point, too. I mean, Ben Simmons is he's put together 4 games where he's playing better. He's not what he was, but he's finally had 4 straight games where he's playing better, and I agree with that 100%. If that doesn't invigorate you, if that doesn't make Durant and Kyrie say, okay, it's time to make a move, they're just, to me, once again, they're just mentally soft. They don't rebound, they don't defense, but they're mentally soft.
Yeah. No, they packed it in. And the last game he played, Simmons played, he had 11 points in the first half and didn't score again for the rest of the game. So even when he's playing well, he's playing well for an average player, I guess, but not for Ben Simmons the way he was 3 years ago.
He would do that in Philly, Wendell, because he's not a straight up scorer, man. I mean, he fills the boxes. Yeah. He'll get 9 rebounds, 8 assists. He did all that. He would disappear.
Yeah, but I don't think he even the other night on the second half, I don't think he even filled up the other boxes. He didn't play very good defense. He's just not reliable.
Well, he did.
Even in a good game.
He played 26 or 27 minutes, and he had 9 and 7 on top of the 11 points in 27 minutes. That's good, especially for that time.
Right, but I think 75% of those stats were in the first half.
Doesn't mean okay. Well,
hey, let's give him a little bit of credit. Let's give him a little bit of credit.
Yeah,
he's one of the few brothers that's thank you. He's one of the few brothers that made it back from dating a Kardashian. Okay, he's still got his career, he still got his money, and he was dating a Kardashian. So give him some time.
You know, I'm just looking at the box score here from that game, and Kyrie had 23, Durant had 20, and I'm trying to see where else, you know, whoever else is stepping up. There's nobody else.
They don't really have anybody. That's why I said Joe Harris has disappeared. They just don't have it. But don't forget, Philly, first of all, is not this great defensive team. And to be losing every touch, I don't see how Durant and Kyrie are going to get 20 and then 23 and be satisfied with that against who they're playing against.
I think it goes back to I think it's more of an indictment of the system that these general managers have been putting in place for the last 10 years. Trading draft picks for proven commodities when clearly these kids are coming out of college with the fire. I mean, how many young teams that we can look at right now that have draft picks up the wazoo coming in the next few years because they traded away their talent, like the Pistons got rid of Blake Griffin, like all those other teams who got rid of their stars, and now they have a bunch of picks, and then they field a team that can get you 45, 50 games with a limited payroll. I mean, that's the next system that's coming up, and whoever's on top of that is going to win. It's gonna create that next era. The Pelicans are on that. Memphis is on that. Cleveland's on that, where they're not turning away their talent. They're like, okay, we got draft picks. We got these people that don't want to be here, i.e. Anthony Davis, i.e. Kyrie Irving, who don't want to be here, who think they're something else. Let's send them somewhere else, get that garbage team's picks, and keep fielding a good team. That's what these teams have been doing season after season on below the radar. That's why a team like Portland can keep playing well, even though they continually clear out their roster because they don't give away their picks. They don't trade for assets.
They're like,
you know, hey, Dad.
They're like the They're like the NBA version of the New England Patriots. They just keep plugging in and plugging in. They just are. Before we get off the Nets, I want to hear you guys take on the whole issue with Kyrie that came up with his comment. What's your take on how the NBA handled it? I mean, I had a problem with this. If they gave him the week suspension and stuck to it, okay. But then it turned into 2 weeks. and it turned into, well, he wasn't sincere. He didn't really apologize and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was way over the top. If they had stuck to their week, all right, cool, whatever. But it seemed like they just wanted this brother to get on his knees. And I'm not a Kyrie fan by any long shot. But I just thought it was kind of messed up.
I think they need to make up their minds what they want these athletes to be. You know, if they say something, depending on what they say, they want them to have a voice. And when they say something they don't like, they want them to rescind it. I mean, you know,
they want them to shut up and dribble then, yeah.
They tell you 1 minute to shut up and dribble, and then you speak your mind, and then they tell you they want you to, I'm not condoning what he did, but, you know, you look at the whole platform that he gave the thumbs up on that film on. I mean, what was it on? Was it on, where did he give the thumbs up? What was that?
It was Twitter.
So Twitter had it on their platform. There's no discussion about the owner and the platform and other people who you know, I don't know.
I don't know. I think if there was something on Twitter about the Proud Boys, and then and I'll just throw out, the coach for the Warriors gives us a thumbs up, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem. So you know what, Kyrie, to me, he's his own worst enemy. You can't attach yourself to any type of hate speech. All he had to say was, hey, didn't realize it was X, my bad. And so that's why I pulled it down once I realized, and then move on. But he just took this defensive attitude, and it just created more swirl than necessary. But I agree with you, Bobby. They should have just cast down, this is what the suspension is, and let's just move on.
I agree with Cliff. I agree with Cliff in that it's about who sent it, who the messenger is. We all know Kyrie doesn't have a lot of runway. So he doesn't have a lot of runway. So eventually he's gonna put his foot in his mouth one way or another. But think about it like this. What if it was Chris Paul? What if it was LeBron? What if it was someone who we don't have a bunch of other mission issues that will be sitting for us to bring up, show clips of? It's because of it's him. He's an easy target, and he goes it. It's just like Allen Iverson with the practice thing. It became a moment because he made it a moment. It could easily been. He could have just sat there and said nothing. He chose to engage.
He attached himself to that. And if it had been LeBron or anybody else, and they would have asked him, hey, did you know you attached yourself to X?
But he could hide behind ignorance if he chose to.
Yes.
Because he's a professional athlete. Instead, he chose to engage in the moment.
Exactly.
And that's what gave the viral clip, and therefore that gives the media the ammunition of Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, just go in on this guy. And it's all based on, and then he's responding on his Instagram. It's like, you got to play basketball, man. like you're supposed to shoot hoops. Kobe don't got time for that. Kobe's like, I'm in the gym too much to have time for this.
Well, I mean, but he should be able to have an opinion. But I get what you're saying, K-Town. But
the form he chose, he was against it. He had a whole room of reporters, basically, and he called them out for it. He's like, "You guys are bringing this up to me to get a moment," and he still gave it to him in that moment at the same time.
While he's saying it, right? I saw something today by Malcolm X, and I didn't agree with all of what he was saying. But he was talking about, Black representation as far as leadership. And he said, And he mentioned some people. He said you got Lena Horne, you got Dick Gregory, you got Sidney Poitier. He says there's no other culture where actors, musicians, and athletes are the leaders and are considered leaders of their community. And he said, could you imagine if people were going to Bing Crosby and Bob Hope and so on and so forth and using these guys as the voice of their culture? And I went, yeah, I kind of get that. But, when you have lack of leadership, you have to use what leadership you have. But still, he made a good point in that sometimes there's too much. You take an athlete, you put them in a situation, and then you pose these questions at them, and then it starts, and then they just, and they use his voice as if it matters more than, it's not like I don't know, it's not like they're getting quotes from Obama every other week. They're getting, you get online, you hear quotes from Kyrie Irving, who said the world. So
I wouldn't want to get quotes from Obama every week because he's politically correct. He is not going to get into too much of anything. And you're right. And Malcolm X, I understand what he's saying, like you, but the only black folks who had the power in those days were these cats. Okay, because you got to understand, in those days, the only voices that were really out there were Malcolm and Dr. King. And when Dr. King, don't forget, when Dr. King in 67 gave at Riverside Church his anti-Vietnam speech, and he was murdered a year to the day, exactly the same day, which was done on purpose, all of the black bourgeois folks, or the head of the NAACP, Thurgood Marshall, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., all of these established guys who were safe were pissed at Dr. King and were killing Dr. King. There was a poll then, that big poll that came out that year before his assassination. And amongst black folks, 68% said he was outdated, he was unnecessary. This was Dr. King they were talking about. Thurgood Marshall, once again, saving his position, called Dr. King this. He said, he just killed him. He said that all he wants to do is get money to pay for his trips. He's a boy on a man's errand. That's what Thurgood Marshall, Supreme Court judge, said about Dr. King. He's a boy on a man's errand. So that being said, there was no black folks in power besides them two, basically, who were willing to step outside and say what had to be said, except for some of these actors and musicians and stuff like that. A lot of people don't know. Harry Belafonte is the one who funded Dr. King. He funded Dr. King. Our folks used to have rent parties. Well, Belafonte did it in Hollywood. And he would have these rent parties, except it wasn't for rent. It was money for Dr. King. And all of these Hollywood elites would show up, black and white. Burt Lancaster, all these cats. And the next day, Belafonte would give Dr. King $40,000, $50,000 to fund, because it costs money for his people to go somewhere, stay in a hotel, and eat. Belafonte and these cats, and Lena Horne and all of them, they were the only voices we had. I didn't want to get on that side thing, but I just had to, because that's all we had at that time. If it wasn't King and Malcolm X, who else was going to speak?
But look at the coordination between them. Different industries coordinating together. Hey, Kyrie's on an island. There is a conversation on our side about this. There is work being done. There are people doing this stuff, lawyers and all that stuff in courts, creating this change. He thinks that him on his island can do something. And he speaks with his money. There's no question. He's giving donations to different things. So it's not like he's not putting his money where his mouth is.
Yeah, he's done some
good. He's like, I'm well read. But he ain't reading the right stuff. You're not reading the 48 Laws of Power. You're not reading The Art of War, because you're not engaging these people in the right battlefields. by yourself on the podium against reporters who have their agenda already set for you is not the battle you pick. If you want to make a point like that, you put 50 brothers behind you. They look like they got guns. You sit down at the podium and you say what you want to say. And you dare anyone in the room to question you. You don't do what he did,
right?
Because you're in a firing squad.
We talked about that our first show. That there was. I don't see why he got in that. But the other thing with him, I said he wants to be the smartest guy in the room, like you just said. But he also, I read books, but I also went to Duke. I think that's very prevalent in his mindset too. I'm also
went
a black
to Duke
man
for 1 year.
Went to Duke. I know Jalen Rose and others got a problem with me because I went to Duke, but I went to Duke. I think
and we never saw him play.
I think
we never saw him play there. Anyway. Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, man.
Because we haven't covered this. About a half hour in. My Chicago Bulls just beat the 2 best teams in the East, supposedly, the other week. Handily, I might add. Without Lonzo. Can I get a little big ups? Maybe the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, everyone wants the Heat to be good. Everybody wants the Raptors, all these teams to be good. We are good. And we beat the teams that you guys are crowning. Handily beat them.
I didn't know that.
So Thanksgiving Day, we beat the Bucks. And 3 days before that, we housed the Celtics. Housed them.
Right.
So I'm just saying, any debate on that? I think we're at least the 3rd best team in the East, at least.
So, Caetano, we need to have this conversation in the month of April, May to see where you're.
If we healthy, we're gonna be right there. That's all that matters. Health.
Yes.
That's all it's been for us.
That is true. That is
exactly
true.
Little banged up here and there. Vucevic, little banged up here and there. Dragic is out right now. Old man, falling beyond his years. Who else? Let me think. You got all these young guys that are stepping up. We know they're going to fall off come the playoff time. So we need the Kobe Whites to be there. We need, Drummond to give us more than 2 points, 2 rebounds a game. We need, maybe that pick up 6-man off the waiver wire at some point. Who knows?
I think Cliff got a little point because somebody earlier said that anybody could beat anybody on any given night, and I get that, but they got 2 dogs. But you're still talking about a team that's 8-11.
Oh, don't get me wrong.
11. So
they
got a little ways to go before I think they're part of the equation.
Records don't matter right now.
Huh?
Records don't matter right now. So I'm gonna give it an even better analogy because of the football. Because football is even more about records, right? So I was watching the Lions yesterday. The Lions look really good.
Yeah, they did.
The reason they look good is because they know they're still in it. They got 6 losses, but they're still in it. As long as they don't lose that 7th loss before they get to 500, they can make the playoffs.
Right.
That's why they're fighting. So the Bulls, the record don't matter right now. As long as they didn't get to 30 games. Once you lose 30 games, you start looking at how many wins you have. You got 20, then you got 40. Where you at? You only got 11 right now.
But welcome back. You got a team like the Celtics. They're 12-4 without Robert Williams III, and he's a beast on the defensive end. He's a modern day quiet Bill Russell. Early in his career, they don't have him, and they're 12-4. The Milwaukee Bucks, as we said 2 weeks ago, they're 12-4 without Middleton, and we all know that Middleton's a beast. I know you don't want to get into records, but damn, they are 12-4, and both of them are missing monsters. And
let me ask you a question before you go forward. Me neither. Let me ask you a question before you get into this, right? You just said 2 teams are 12-4. That's 24 wins and 8 losses. 3 of those losses are from us. So I'm just saying.
Okay. All right.
I'm just saying. They've been waxing everybody.
All right, Mr.
And 50% of their L's have been either from Chicago or in Chicago. What does that say about us? Are we only getting up for these teams? Are we not letting teams beat us that shouldn't beat us? I mean, I think that says something more about us than it says about them. If we're 8-11, we're beating the best teams.
That's great. That's great.
Cliff,
I don't know if you want a piece of that one. I can't touch that one. He's on point with that. He's on point with that.
Last time I checked, I don't think they're giving out championship trophies in the month of November.
No. Oh, wait, whoa. I didn't say nothing about no championship. I said third best team in the East.
Hey, man.
I didn't say nothing about no championship. Whoa.
But
I am not LeBron. I don't do this 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't do that. Okay?
Yeah, but I guess my point being is, yeah, Chicago has a squad. They've got a squad when healthy. I think they pose a threat to anybody in the East. They pose a threat. So that's why I'm saying April, May. Let's see where your starters are. Let's see where your heavy hitters are health wise. Because yeah, they would definitely pose a threat. But to Bobby's point, no Middleton, that's huge. If they had Middleton last year, I don't think the Celtics make it to the finals. And the boy Williams from the Celtics, you know, he's a game changer in himself from a defensive standpoint. I mean, that dude can jump through the sky. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. April, May. I'm not discounting the Bulls. They're stout. But let's see what happens in April, May.
And let's also see if DeRozan stays healthy. That's been a bugaboo for him. Yeah. You better start praying.
I'm praying for Lonzo.
Huh?
I said I'm praying for Lonzo. We get him back.
Is he coming back? Is he coming back?
I don't know, man. It's, you know how those knee injuries, once they get extended, multiple surgeries, you gotta just not even count on them anymore. You know, you gotta come into the season not even thinking about it at that point.
They said like 10 days ago that they admitted that he was further behind than they would have liked him to be at this point. So that's not a good sign.
Yeah, I wouldn't even discuss him at this point. He's on a different time frame than a regular knee injury at this point. So I would he comes back. I would love to have him back. He's a perfect fit for our team, but
I feel sorry for them young players with those injuries, man. I mean, who was the rookie of the year that year? Roy Brandon, or what was his name? That wound up.
Brandon Roy. Brandon Roy.
That was a bad boy. And
I forgot about him.
Yeah. Now he's coaching high school now. It's a shame because, you know, this guy was legit player, you know. Yeah, the whole package.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll piggyback off of what Bobby said a second ago, because I did bring it back to the Bulls, but we all know that the matchup is going to be Celtics-Bucks at some point, whether it's in the second round or the third round. So, I mean, if we aren't hurting them, what do you guys think? I mean, he was kind of bringing it there as far as like the early favorites.
Hey, they're susceptible to injuries too. Gaetano, they're susceptible to injuries too. So you just don't know, man. That's the thing. You know, any of their key guys goes down, changes the whole dynamic of the East.
Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
No. Which one at this point? Now that we've gotten to this point, which one? I say Jaylen Brown.
I didn't hear your question.
Well, we've always been debating who was the better one. Everyone always liked Tatum. But yeah, Jaylen Brown has been
Tatum.
He's been, though. Like, you can't deny his progression.
Yeah,
I would go with Jaylen Brown personally.
In my opinion, Jaylen Brown's good, but if I had to pick one over the other, I'd take Tatum. And it still burns me to this day that the Lakers should have taken Tatum in the draft instead of taking Lonzo and his big mouth father. They had Tatum right there in their hands, and they didn't take him. And the other kid from Sacramento, Fox, they didn't take him either. But I digress.
But did you think Jalen was going to be all that back then when he was draft?
So so between Fox, Tatum, and Lonzo, first of all, Fox destroyed Lonzo in the college championship, in the tournament. Those two went head to head, and Fox killed him. So immediately, I would have gone for Fox. It would have been between Fox and Tatum.
Fox is killing everybody the last 2 years. He's killing folks. He's just on a bad team. Nobody's really talking about him. They haven't proved what he's a beast.
Yeah.
Talking about injuries, before we get into the Clippers, Andre, I mean, I don't remember basketball. I don't like the load management crap, but I've never seen so many players always fucking hurt. I don't get it. I mean, with all dietitians and knowing more about staying in shape and knowing more about taking care of your body, over these years, I just don't, and maybe it's me, but I just don't remember watching ball in the 70s and 80s when they're running around in damn Converse sneakers. I don't remember guys being injured anywhere near as much as what we see over these last 5 years.
Well, me thinking like I've thought about that a lot, but I guess there was a category of injuries. Maybe that might explain what's going on. I mean, I've always said, I remember saying this to Breland a lot. I don't know if I ever said it to UK Town, but Bree was here, and I remember him working out and stuff like that. And I was telling him, I said, you could build the muscles you need. You can build the flexibility in the muscles. I said, I don't know an exercise that can strengthen a ligament. I don't know an exercise that can make your meniscus a better meniscus than the one you were born with. And I just think, as you build these, athletes around these, the same, for lack of a better way to describe, skeletons. You have these huge muscles, they're bumping into each other, and you still have the basic structure underneath. And I think that when you look at some of the stuff that's giving way, like shoulders, ligaments, ankles, a lot of that stuff has to do with some of the finer connective type of stuff, and not so much the larger muscles. I mean, you've had some quads that have popped loose, but I don't know if the torque and everything. I mean, you look at the sneaker that what's name popped through, Zion Williamson's popped through, and you're wondering if there's just parts of the body that you just can't girder up for this type of rigorous type of nowadays type of athletic. Maybe that's it.
I mean, can anybody identify 60s or 70s and maybe even 80s a guy like a Ja Morant with his athleticism, or when Derrick Rose first came out with his athleticism? Anybody can identify another type of player like that?
David Thompson.
Was he that size? I'm talking about that type of explosiveness.
No, he was explosive. What was it, about 6'6"?
Yeah, David Thompson was that player. Yeah, but then if you remember,
yeah, good point.
His knees gave out on him. To explode like that off. I mean, look what happened to Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose was like a dynamo, and his knees just couldn't support it all. It's amazing what these athletes can do these days. I just look at every time I see Ja go up, I think, man, he's put a lot of torque on those knees, on those ankles. Same thing with Zion. I just hope that they can have a long career, but it's scary. I mean,
as I said back in the day, Elgin Baylor was that cat even before David Thompson. And Cliff, to your point, there hasn't been very many. When I think of Zion, I think of a young Barkley who was a big dude and running the floor and jumping and leading the break. He didn't have those kind of injuries. I don't know if he was quite as dynamic as Zion around the hoop. And he didn't have quite the lift that Zion has. But you got a good point, Cliff. There isn't very many, put it that way. There isn't very many.
Although Moses did get Barkley into the gym though. There's a whole discussion where Barkley turned to Moses and Moses told him, get 10 pounds off, now get off 20, now get off 30. And then he starts seeing the benefits of it. And he trimmed down quite a bit. But to your point, yeah, I mean, I think when Barkley really became the MVP type of player, he was also a smarter player. And he learned to do more. Like I remember him saying one time, he says, I love those young boys that like to jump. He says, I give them a head fake. They don't go for that, I give them a head fake. He said, well, if they don't go for that, he says, I give them a third one. He says that they're going to jump sooner or later. So he got smarter. I mean, he wasn't just trying to jump over people. He was smarter and was less athletic towards the end of his career when he won MVP.
Right. But don't forget, he was also with a team of veterans. He had cats to learn from.
Right.
Zion doesn't have that luxury.
Right.
What's his name's there now, McCollum at guard. But when you're Groom playing with Dr. J and Moses and these cats, he could sit at their knee. He learned a lot about the game from basketball that Zion hasn't had that luxury at all.
No.
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with guaranteed contracts. Back in the day, they don't play. If they didn't play a year, that could have been the end of their career. They could be blackballed from the league. The other thing, the big difference between the NBA back then, the money that the owners made was through people coming to the game, ticket sales. Now the owners make money through advertising and through TV. So it's the whole concept of how to take care of your assets is just very different today than it was back then. It's just a different thing from an owner's point of view.
That's a great point. Hey, Wendell, speaking of an owner's view, bring up that question that you wanted to bring up about you being a general manager.
Oh, right. Well, kind of two questions. If you're a general manager and you could be a general manager of any team in the NBA, what team would you want and that you think would win a championship? I guess you're going to pick the team you think you can make it to a champion, or what young team would you want for kind of a long run in the NBA, like Oklahoma or like Memphis or whoever, or now you might even say Portland and a few others. So which young team would you want and which veteran team would you want?
My young team is a team that's not playing that well right now. That I think they're 10-8, as we talked about a few weeks ago, would be the Grizzlies. Memphis has such a young, dynamic, multi-talented group. I think the reason why they're 10-8 now, which is okay, but Bane being out. But I would say them. They got some old school to them. They're dogs. They're nasty. They play D. They rebound. And as they showed with the Warriors last year, they ain't scared of nobody. They ain't scared of nobody. So if I was a GM, I think that they fit both bills, Wendell. I think they feel that they have a shot to win it this year, but they definitely are lined up for Bear for the next 5 years. So I would say them. And
all right. And in terms of an established team, who would you want?
Listen, I'm a Warriors fan. I got to stick with them. Only because everybody knows their talent. But they have been great, even though their bench has been sorry this year. They have been great at plugging in people. I really think they're going to add somebody, But throughout these winning years, they've had great benches. Andre, help me out. Who was that guy? He used to be a player back with the Jazz, and he came to them and coming off the bench, and he'd give him 12, 13. He was nasty. He would rebound. They get those guys. The other guy, Livingston, who tore his knee up. I mean, they invest in their players. They don't mind if they're hurt for a while, especially the guys off the bench. They know that they're going to need them late in the year. I would say the Warriors for me still.
I can't think of who you're talking about, but it's interesting when you start talking about the organization and the Warriors and how they always plug somebody in year by year and kept winning. That sounded just like you were talking about the Chicago Bulls. Because I remember they had Pippen and Jordan, and they had a different center every year. They had a different fill-in play. They had different. There was always a shooter, and it was either Paxson or it was Kerr or it was
Craig Hodges.
Or it was there was a couple of them. There was a couple more.
Didn't they get the guy from the Knicks too?
Yeah, they got Tucker.
Right.
And it was always a player or two, and I always remember looking at them in Hanson.
Right.
And I remember thinking they always got a couple of guys that are either dog-nosed, nose to the grindstone type of players, or they're perfect role players, and that's all they ever needed. They just kept plugging them in, and every year, if you look at that their player roster, there was always a different center, always a different forward, always somebody coming off the bench as a shooter, always. And it's never the same, and they filled the role. Matter of fact, Kerr said the same thing in that about he talked to Paxson, and Paxson said he knew he was a role player, and that's what Jordan needs. He needs a guy to just plug in that spot when you need him. And so, yeah, I think that it sounds a lot like what the Warriors have been doing, and it's obviously a successful recipe.
You're right, because when they took on an old Bill Cartwright, then they took on Luke Longley and Bill Wennington and these cats. And
that kid and that guy that got killed by his brother. What's his name? Bison.
Oh, Bison Deli.
Yeah, Bison Deli.
Bison Deli, yeah.
Good player, and he played 1 year with them and won a championship.
Yeah, that's just what they were known for. Exactly. So yeah, I would say the Warriors. Anybody else with a young team and go into Wendell's question?
I'm taking Oklahoma just because they're going to get right next year, and they have so many draft picks.
Who did you say, Wendell? Because you broke up. Who did you say?
I'm going to take Oklahoma because they have Holmgren coming in next year, or whatever that tall white dude's name is. And they have so many draft picks all stacked up. They just have a lot of things you can trade for, a lot of maneuvers they can make. And their team's not bad right now. They got, what is it? What's the 3-letter initial guy who can just play? SG, help me out with his name, guys.
Gilchrist?
Yeah. So they just, yes, thank you. So they just have a nice squad right now. They have their number 2 pick that's coming back next year. And I don't know how many draft picks they have, but in the next 3-4 years, it's probably 5 or 6.
I'm going to tell you the one problem that they will always have. They will never get a top-line black superstar to go to Utah.
I'm talking about Oklahoma City.
I mean, Oklahoma City is the same. That's the crowd.
Yeah, but who cares? You get the draft picks.
You do care, but those draft picks. They're gonna leave after year 3. Not everybody's gonna be like Giannis.
That's
Oklahoma and Utah are the 2 places brothers don't want to play.
Yeah, I will say. I don't buy it, but I guess
it's been factual. Look through time, barring
we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I think they could hang on to a few of their stars and be quite good. Plus, they got a white boy, and he'll stay. So that throws a hole in that argument.
Yeah, he'll stay,
but that throws a hole in that argument. So their best player is likely going to be the guy that's hurt, and he's white. So yeah, I take Oklahoma. But I get your point. A lot of black people want to play for New York and LA. in Chicago.
Anybody but those two teams, the Jazz and Oklahoma.
Well, I don't see any of them wanting to come to the Wizards, and we're in one of the blackest cities in the country. So,
well, that's because they suck.
Well,
okay.
That might be true. No, they don't this year. You see how we're playing out. And secondly, people want to play for LA. They want to play for New York.
The Wizards are the Knicks without the media glare.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They really are. Yeah. I mean, I know they're playing pretty well now. I know they're 10-7.
You think everybody wants
found a little game, but
where am I? Oh shoot!
You lost, just like your damn Wizards. You lost.
Wait, hold on.
See, talking about the Wizards got you all lost.
So, Bobby, you think all the free agents want to flock to Memphis? That's a hot spot for free agents.
No, I'm saying Memphis already has what they need.
Oh, all right, okay.
Memphis already has it.
All right.
And I can see some star player who's long in the tooth, who's looking for a ring, going there later. Yeah, but they have what they need now.
All right. Have you been to Memphis?
No, I ain't been to no damn Memphis.
Okay.
I've been to Norwalk, but I ain't been to Memphis.
All right. There you go. What? You need to go to Memphis.
What the hell's that mean? What the hell's that mean?
It's a hood.
Huh?
It's just a hood, man.
Okay, but they got a squad.
I hear you.
They got a squad. They got some nice
players. They got
some black stallions there, man.
They do. They got some nice players. And Bane played with his little short arms.
Hey, let me ask this. Do you guys think that that Atlanta will ever win a championship or even get close to? I mean, that seems like a perfect. You got a couple of quality players in there, and they start having some momentum. That you might find a couple of players who might want to jump on board that if it ever starts taking off. No.
I can see players wanting to go there. I mean, realize they had a good year last year. Now that boy Simons, who they got from Portland, they got one of the best backcourts of the league. With him and Trae Young, and Capel is a defensive player who will score at times. I don't know if they can keep that power forward. His game is changing because they want him to shoot threes, and that's really not his game at all. Can't think of his name right now. They have
Collins?
Some players. I can see them picking somebody.
Collins, Bobby, or somebody else?
Yes, Collins. That's him. Thanks, man.
They got Murray too, right? They got DeJounte Murray, right?
Right. That's the I'm talking. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did I say? Simons. Yeah. Them Simons. Yeah. Murray from San Antonio.
Simons in Portland. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Murray from San Antonio. He can flat out ball. There's no way that you're going to spend 6 years in San Antonio with that coach, and every year your average go up 3, 4, and then the last few years 4 and 5 points, and not be a super player who understands the game. Popovich, if you playing for him that long, you got the game. Yeah, he's fantastic, and now he has more freedom out there in Atlanta, and he's showing it. But yeah, I could see them doing it with a couple of pieces because they were a major threat last year. I never thought Trae Young coming out of college was going to be that good. I really didn't. First of all, he looked like he was 67 to me, but still needs whatever. But that's a guy totally miscalculated. I never thought he'd be as good and as dramatic as he is. Talking about a team that everybody's sleeping on. We're kind of far away, but Clippers are 8-7. Kawhi came back, was playing well. Now he's out again for a little bit. Paul George is out today too. But Norman Powell and Reggie Jackson have stepped up. When they get these guys back, when you get Paul George, well, mainly Kawhi on the court at the same time, they're 11-7 right now. Very early, as Catano says, but they're loaded for bear. They're loaded for bear. Anybody have anything to say about the Clippers? They can worry people.
Can't trust them.
Can't argue that.
Can't trust that they'll stay healthy.
It's sad to see a guy that talented go through this.
Yeah, just can't trust that they'll stay healthy. I mean, they'll need to prove to me personally some consistency, maybe a 20-game, 25-game run before the load management stuff. But even with load management, they're still having these issues. Just can't trust them that they'll be able to persevere through a playoff run or to a playoff run with their current makeup. They're just too susceptible to injury.
You know, Lakers winning 5 out of 6. I still think they're a dog team, but you got to give credit. Westbrook has finally seemed like he's fit into coming off the bench, and Anthony Davis, he had that run when Bron was out. You know, averaging 37 and 18. He missed last night. You know what I think was big for them? Not that they're going to win it by any stretch of the imagination, but when Pat Bev knocked that cat to the ground from behind, I don't think it's by accident that you saw last night Westbrook was ready to fight the dude, Collins, whatever his name, who made him bleed like he cut him in his forehead with a knife. Pat Bev, he may not be able to score, but he ain't no joke, man. He brings that toughness to any team he's on. And I think that has a lot to do with their little turnaround right now. I think everybody's been dogging them all year. I think that gave them a little, we got to stick our foot up somebody's ass once in a while. Anybody have anything to say about that?
I thought it was that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bobby. I didn't particularly like the move with Beverly coming up behind that cat and shoving him to the ground. I would have liked to see him square off and do something. But I think that sort of sparked the rest of the team in we have to protect one another. We have to look out for one another. You can't have this guy standing over your player that's down on the ground. So folks have to realize when they come play the Lakers, they're just not going to be a pushover. So I appreciate Beverly for what he did, but I thought it was Bush League. You're going to come up behind somebody and hit him in the back. No, square off against that dude, face to face, and then take him on.
Well, it's not his first time doing that, too, because remember when they were going up against Chris Paul and a timeout was called, and he took like a 4-step run and shoved Paul big time he hates Chris Paul. I don't know if you guys saw the rant. He was brutally honest, killing Chris Paul about what a snake he is, and that's why nobody in the league likes him, because you can't trust him. He's behind the scenes. So there was a lot to that shove, but he did the same thing, and that's a cat his size.
I think because he did the push behind Chris Paul, which was real Bush League, that now they're putting the two of these situations together, when in fact it was totally two different situations. Paul was walking away and he rushed him. This one still was standing over him, and Beverly was behind him. So he would have had to run around and do a U-turn to get him in the front. He just wanted him off his teammate. And be honest with you, Anthony Davis should have done that. Anthony Davis should have. Davis didn't even have to push him. All he had to do was say, "Dude, get off him," like that.
Right.
And Anthony Davis didn't do anything. So for him to have to run by his own teammate and push him off and push Ayton off like that spoke something to Davis, I think. I made him say, "Dude, this is what you're supposed to do." And yeah, I think it did send a message to the team that we gotta have each other's back. And I'll tell you what, man, people they're gonna kind of get together on just on that one play and say, hey, this is how teammates treat, support each other and back each other up. So yeah.
I got to tell you, Cliff, the only guards, smaller guards that I can imagine would have ran around and gotten his face and did that, or punched him in the face, would have been cats from Connecticut. Okay? Cal Murphy from Norwalk loved to fight 7-footers. He fought anybody at any time. He got in your face. Cal Murphy, I could see him running around and getting in his face. And also, the brother from New Haven, who I told you the story about the first week, Super John Williamson.
John Williamson.
Those two were smaller guys, even though Williamson was stocky. Yeah, I could see them circling around and just popping somebody in the face. One thing, I just want to go back for a second because I knew I wanted to say this. When we were talking about Kyrie, and there's talk out there now, Shaq's taking some heat because he called him an idiot on television, which I can't argue, but now it comes out that movie played in one of Shaq's theaters. That movie was promoted and played in a movie theater that Shaq owns. So you look really bad, Shaq, going against Kyrie and, concerning this movie, but as it comes down to it, you promoted it and played it in your own movie theater. I just wanted to put that out there because it is factually the truth. Before we go, man, this hour is going by quick, man. But let me ask you guys. I like to ask, what players would you take? Would you take right now big players, centers? He's supposed to be a center. Would you take Rudy Gobert or Anthony Davis? Rudy Gobert or Anthony Davis?
Gobert.
Davis.
I couldn't hear you, Wendell.
I'd take Gobert just because he'll be playing in another 3 weeks.
That's why I would go
Anthony Davis isn't going to play but another week or two. He's about ready for a month off.
So you say you wouldn't take big clothes?
Just too much risk. I caught that.
Yeah, Gobert knows his role, and Gobert is good at what he does.
Yeah,
and his reliability, and so it pains me to say Gobert.
Gobert reminds me of a little better offensive Mutombo. Stayed in their role, defense, rebounding, just went after everything. Gobert can just score a little bit more. Would you take Rudy Gobert or Jared Allen from Cleveland? Same type of player.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Allen.
Yeah, Allen does a little bit more offensively. Plus, he has the fro.
Yeah, I like Jared Allen. I like Jared Allen.
Yeah, I'd have to go with Allen too. I'd have to go with
that
Allen.
French accent is a little off-putting. I just can't take him seriously. It makes me think more of Pepe Le Pew out there more than a ball player.
I was looking them both up. Gobert is 13-12 so far this season, and Allen's 13-10 so far this season. But yeah, I think we're all agreeing with Allen. Before we end up, I gotta say something about football. Sorry. I'm so sick of stop trying to compare Josh Allen to my boy Money Mahomes. Stop it. Stop it. Okay? I understand the dynamics of what's going on. That, they want him to be their version of Larry Bird. Because when you look at the top 6 teams, first place teams in the NFL, 4 of them have black quarterbacks. So there's something going on where folks are getting concerned that they're losing their lifetime legacy for quarterbacks. Okay? But I see the same thing I see with Doncic in the NBA, I've seen with Josh Allen. I know Josh Allen has a lot of talent, but he has not done it crunch time like Mahomes has. There's a reason why now all of a sudden he has, 6 interceptions in the red zone in the last 3 games. He just hasn't shown that he can produce like that. So stop all that, putting him in the same breath as Mahomes.
Hey, Bobby. The one thing I'll say on that is Josh Allen tries to do it all: run, pass. He tries to do everything. Where Mahomes, he'll distribute. He's sort of a point guard out there. He'll take over like that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. What do you think, Wendell?
It's raining hard here, so I just think that what Mahomes has changed the way the game's played in the same way that the dude from Golden State has changed the way the game's played.
Don't get Andre ticked off now. Don't get my cousin started.
Just because of just the way he's just changed the nature of the way. There's been other running quarterbacks before, and athletic quarterbacks, but nobody's done what Mahomes has done from the quarterback position.
In a good way. In a good way.
You had to get that big in there. Yeah, I feel that. What do you think, Gus? What do you think about the Allen to Mahomes comparison?
I got to disqualify myself from this. I'm not a super big football fan, but I can understand where the dynamic of it, and that they want that. Larry Bird was legitimately, he was legitimately a great player regardless.
Right.
It's the media that try to go after him. So I don't know if the question is so much if it's a question about what the media is trying to do versus the type actual player and who's better. That's 2 different discussions, because sometimes they can kind of get conflated. Like you have like a player like the greatest shooter we've ever seen in Steph Curry, and everybody will admit that. Top 5 player, please.
Yeah, he's my boy, but I can see what. I can see what you're saying. Now, I wouldn't say he's top 5. No, I wouldn't say change the game. Yeah, I think for the better at times.
Top 10. Top 10.
Yeah.
Hey, Bobby, I know we got to go, but I got to say this.
Okay.
All right. I'll put a list up next week of the top of 10 players standing on a basketball court, 5 waiting to get on and 5 playing. You know who the 5 who are playing are, because you can name the top 5 of all time without even all of us will agree on. But there's 5 waiting in the wings. And then Steph Curry walks up. And who is he going to replace waiting to get in? That's my question next week. And I'll give it a list.
Why don't, you know what, we should do that. Everybody just come up with a list of 10. Everybody have their list of 5 starters and their 5 bench. And let's chop that up.
And to Cliff's point, in a conversation we've had to the side, what's the criteria?
Yeah, are we looking for the best team or the best players?
Winning a championship.
I mean,
so you're putting together a team.
Well, that's different. Now, that's not the top 10 players of all time. I mean, if
right.
you tell me I'm going to take Steve Kerr out of the mix on the Bulls and I'm going to put Steph Curry in there, it's a no-brainer. Now you're talking about you're taking a solid shooter in Kerr, and now you're putting the best of all time there. That's different. But are you talking about the top 10 players all time? Top 10 players. I mean, just off the top of my head, if Curry steps in that top 10, I'm knowing on my list, you're telling Akeem Olajuwon wanted to go home. That's all I'm saying.
Right. You might have to also, I don't know, you might have to also say, what era are they going to play in today's game or the game 20 years ago? Because in today's game, if you have a bunch of players on your team that we grew up with from the 70s and 80s weren't 3-point shooters, might have been a few of them. If you have a team that can't hit threes these days, it's kind of hard to keep up with some of these teams. All that ground and pound. I don't know if that wins too much in the NBA, and that's what Barkley said years ago before Golden State won it. Remember, he kept saying Golden State would never win it because they shot too many threes. Said they would never win it, and you don't hear that shit anymore over the last few years. But he was big for saying that.
Well,
I don't know how much that ground and pound would work against these teams that can get threes up.
Yeah, but they changed the game too. They made it a more marketable game by allowing obviously a 3-point shot is the shot that is the glamorized shot now. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, let's put that together for next week. Great job, guys. Everybody have a good Sunday, and I'll catch you next Sunday, everybody. Thank you. Did it again, little Bobby Ramos. We did it again. Got another one in. I love you, son. You're my hero, as always.